We started out actually with this observation that the world with all of the different SaaS applications is moving into increasingly manual toil that goes between kind of connecting all of these SaaS applications together. So we actually started out as an integration platform, and over time, realized that the main use case that we saw that was really, really painful for a lot of different customers of ours were in the DevOps space. And part of this was based off of two different observations. The first was that, operations teams, despite being so closely aligned with engineering, is actually not at all a data-driven business. Most of the DevOps tooling that we see that, focuses around incident management, it really tracks one or two metrics at best, and that's MTTA or MTTR. And we thought that we could do a lot better. But in order to get this data, we took this interesting human in the loop approach to actually collecting that data. And we did it through this, at the core, what we call interactive runbooks. So, how do you mix codified processes that help humans figure out, step by step, what should I do, with machine processes, which is, you could think of it as a command and control center for how to allow that operator to then trigger and interact with machine automation at various points. And the other big observation that we had is the entire feedback loop, which is so critical to incident management and running a reliability-based engineering org, is largely manual, and that's because we don't have this data. So people write postmortems, and they do it in this highly unstructured way, and then it is left to members of the team to try to fuzzily derive insights in order to improve the system for the next time. And we saw that as highly limiting. And so one of the goals in all of the different tooling that Transposit builds for incident management and operations is really about how can we collect data in a way that includes both the human side of the process, as well as the automated and machine side of the process. And with this intention of how can we then allow machines to improve and derive insights so that your organization can get better over time. Their first experience with Transposit, they say, we want full automation. We want, when an incident happens, the incident to automatically resolve without any sort of human intervention. And while this is a dream that, we all hope to get to at one point, we know that the majority of organizations, their starting point when they first onboard to Transposit is that they don't even know where to start for automation. So, what we have them do is come on board and begin by just codifying human processes. Write down that checklist of what you want a person to do through our runbooks. And this then can act as a building block for automation. So we start by recording the data about what runbooks you're using and how you're stepping through the processes and aggregating data through postmortems to give feedback and signal. And then over time, we can improve your experience by suggesting these are common runbooks that you use to resolve this class of incident, or when this alert comes in, here's the workflow that you should have. And so to make that a little bit more concrete, you can think of it as, on day one, you might inject a very, very dumb workflow into Transposit. That workflow might look like, here is a select field that you can choose a graph that you want me to fetch from Datadog. And this provides value even on day one, because you can not have to remember to grab a screenshot later on for your postmortem. It's recorded, etc. But what Transposit then can do is say, hey, I know that a human selected this particular graph. And so the user experience for that customer over time gets better, because then in the future we can say, hey, we know that when this class of alert comes in, your best SREs and the ones who are proficient, they usually look at these particular metrics. Or here are, the workflows that they use that typically you can use to remediate. One of the reasons that we took the approach that we did is because we found that the current world of automation platforms out there today is highly limited in that they tend to focus on these event trigger-based automations. And so, problem number one, or how do you think about when humans should be involved, is as easy as, well, if you don't have a detectable machine trigger, that's a good time to involve a human, because that is almost a tautology that you now need to involve a human. But then, beyond that, when we think about what it takes to fully automate a system, you can only fully automate a system that you completely understand and is fully predictable. And so in the particular class of problems that Transposit plays in with incidents, one of the things I often tell people is, look, if your company has been purchased by private equity and you're pretty much in maintenance mode, then you probably stand a chance at over time automating out all the potential problems, because you increasingly have the same incidents, you understand them, and unless there's some externality, you yourself, if you're not developing and evolving your system, are not going to create new levels of instability. But the majority of us are not in those businesses, right? We are in the business of actually actively developing and moving our product forward. And it's actually this active development that creates new system interactions that inevitably have unpredictable behavior. And especially when you first roll out a new product or a new change or some new technology. So in those cases, the ability to fully automate without any human involvement is infeasible, because you don't yet know, or you can't have anticipated that interaction would happen. A lot of that is rooted in the fact that the more complex your automation is, the more intimidating it is to debug it when the automation doesn't work out as planned. And so there's this fundamental trade-off that you have to think about between the fragility that you might introduce by trying to fully automate something versus just doing the bare bones and letting the human be effectively that glue between these different pieces. Humans have the ability to evolve with product changes at a speed that's significantly faster than you can sort of code and evolve the automations themselves. And so I think a good way of thinking of it is focus on automating the parts that give you 80% of the win, and then let human judgment step in and do the other 20%. When you talk about operations and incidents, we're helpful for automating everything from the communication side to the process side. Think of filing Jira tickets, ensuring the different lifecycle pieces, all the way down to automating infrastructure changes. So spinning up a sandbox, or tearing down a Kubernetes cluster. All of those pieces are areas in the DevOps like just space that Transposit can help with. But one of the things that we hear most from customers is that their biggest struggle is at this very, very high level, which is, how do I start to institute a real incident lifecycle process? How do I make sure that an explicit commander is assigned to take charge of the incident? How can I start automating the pieces for the auditing and the tracking that are important to me? How do I automate the pieces that ensure that my customers receive updates and notifications in a timely manner? How can I automate much more sophisticated escalation rules, such that we're bringing in the executive leadership team at the right moments of time? And so, for those pieces, if we're talking about how do we optimize them, it really boils down to a few different things. One is, how do I bring in the right people to the incident? And that's an area that over time, as we're tracking what you do, we can easily give you suggestions that tell you, these are the services that you might want to escalate to based off of a given alert, or other pieces around, how do you make sure the 0 to 3 a.m. call that you've been paged, I'm half asleep, how do I know what to do, right? So can I help you optimize getting that person to the right run book, the processes that they need to get started?